Hey super friends, thanks again for joining us for Superhero Storytime. Today we're going to be reading a story from the Superhero Storybook Collection. We have read so many stories about superheroes, I had to find some other stories about superheroes we may not have read about yet. Today we're going to be reading about the Fantastic Four. How many of you guys have heard of the Fantastic Four? A lot of you, right? Awesome. All right, so let's get started. Reed Richards loved science. It was his passion. He always won first place in the science fair at school, and at home he'd rather study mathematical formulas than play with other kids. He found the world of science and math fascinating. There was so much to learn, and Reed wanted to know everything. Reed was rewarded for his knowledge of science. He even got to go to the state science fair. His teachers were proud of him, and of course, if you read, study, and focus that well, you'll become an expert. And that's exactly what Reed grew up to be. The more he learned, the more he realized just how much there was to learn. He always read about new scientific discoveries and dreamt that one day he would be a world-famous scientist. Pretty cool, huh? Reed didn't lose his love for science as he grew older. He kept studying and loved it more than ever. By the time he was a teenager and most of his friends were starting high school, Reed was sought after by all of the country's best colleges and universities. Since Reed studied a lot, he didn't have time for friends. When he found out that he was going to have a college roommate, he was very nervous. Not only was he awkward at making new friends, he had never had a roommate before. He wasn't sure how to act. His heart pounded as he opened the door to his new dorm room. When Reed opened the door, he saw a big guy who didn't seem very friendly. Although his new roommate seemed intimidating, Reed also knew that he should keep an open mind. "Hi, I'm Reed," he said, extending his hand. Ben took it and smiled. "You must be the youngest kid on campus." "Possibly," Reed said nervously. Well, I might be biggest, Ben said with a laugh. Reed realized that Ben wasn't what he appeared to be. He was a really nice guy. Reed and Ben became fast friends. They helped each other in class. In the evenings and on weekends, they would have meals together. Reed loved cheering Ben on during his wrestling matches. They were always together. Reed learned how to be a good friend. In fact, Reed felt like he and Ben were such good friends that he shared something that he'd never shown anyone else. They were Reed's plans for a new type of spacecraft. He had been working on it for years. This rocket wouldn't need fuel. It would use up the Earth's air and water or land. And best of all, it could be used over and over again. "Wow, you have some fun ideas," Ben said as he looked at the diagram of the ship. Because it wouldn't use fuel, the ship could travel greater distances than humans have ever traveled before. Reed gushed. Reed really believed that he could make the ship. "I'm gonna do it, Ben." "Well, if you do it, I'll be the pilot." The two roommates parted ways. Even though he had been joking with Reed about piloting the spaceship, Ben joined the Marines after he graduated, and there he learned to fly planes and spacecraft. Although they didn't live together, they kept in touch. Reed continued his studies, all the while focusing on his perfect spaceship. He moved out of the dorm and into an apartment. Without Ben around, Reed was lonely. He became close friends with his landlord's niece, Sue Storm, and her younger brother, Johnny. In fact, when Reed got the fantastic news that the government was going to help pay for his spacecraft, he told Sue and Johnny even before he told Ben. Reed spent the next few years building his ship. Reed's friends were very proud of him, but before they could celebrate, the group was given some bad news. The government thought Reed's project had become too expensive, with no proof it would work. Reed made a decision. He He was going to test the ship before it could be destroyed. Ben told Reed he couldn't do without his pilot. The ship worked. The flight into space was smooth and quick, but suddenly the cabin went dark. The crew was thrown about, and they all began to feel strange. Johnny felt very hot. Ben felt so heavy he couldn't move. Reed's head felt as if it would burst, and Sue felt sleepier than she had ever in her whole life. But Reed realized that the ship was about to crash. He struggled to turn on autopilot. The ship rocketed to a rough but safe landing back on Earth. The crew escaped, and Reed figured that the ship must have been hit by a cosmic storm. When they landed, Sue said that she felt very strange, and suddenly she seemed to disappear. She became invisible. But as quickly as it had happened, she reappeared. She called herself Invisible Woman. Something had happened to Ben, too. Sue yelled out and called him a thing. It was the only way to describe what he'd become. Reed had also changed. It seemed his body could bend in any shape imaginable. He called himself Mr. Fantastic. Johnny would call himself the Human Torch because of his new abilities. Whoa, you see them all? The group realized that Reed's experiment may not have worked the way he wanted it to, but it had done something else incredible. It had given them fantastic powers, and they needed those powers to help mankind, just as Reed had intended to do with his spacecraft. And from that moment on, the group of friends would be known as the amazing, incredible, awesome, Fantastic Four. Pretty cool, huh? All right. The end. Thanks for joining us again today for Superhero Storytime. We hope you have a super marvelous day.